Sing unto Yahweh, let all the earth call. Bless his name and show forth his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory amongst the...
Shalom, shalom, Israel. As you can see, for some of you, we went into the Deacon Hassad and I guess they call themselves Genesis. We went on their channel last night and we tried to have a little debate. They wanted to talk about Michael 5, and really I was prepared to debate something else, but okay, fine, let's talk about it. And when I started trying to go into the Hebrew, they wouldn't accept it because they don't accept that the Hebrew have vowels. Okay, their LASHAWAN QADOSH doesn't have vowels, so they say. Okay, so I'm going to show you that it actually does, and it has had vowels since the 9th century BCE. Okay, two consonants make a vowel depending on certain consonants, the hey and the vav, and a couple of others. Okay, so we are going to pull it up, and we're also going to pull up a scholarly source to also prove that their language that they say didn't have vowels has vowels. So they not speaking the correct language. Now, METRES LECTIONIS. What is METRES LECTIONIS? Just click on it and see. METRES LECTIONIS, Latin for mother of reading. METRES LECTIONIS is any consonant that is used to indicate a vowel, primarily in the writing of Semitic languages such as Arabic, Hebrew, and Syriac. The letters that do this in Hebrew are Aleph, Hey, Vav, and Yod, with the latter two in particular being more often vowels than they are consonants. In Arabic, the METRES LECTIONIS are, Aleph, Vav, and Ya. Okay. Because these scripts used to write some Semitic languages lack vowel letters, unambiguous reading of a text might be difficult. Therefore, to indicate vowels, mostly long, consonant letters are used. For example, in the Hebrew construct state form bet, meaning the house of, the middle letter. In the spelling, bet acts as a vowel, but in the corresponding absolute state form bayit, house, which is spelled the same letter represents a genuine consonant. METRES LECTIONIS are extensively employed only in Hebrew, Aramaic, Syriac, and Arabic, but the phenomenon is also found in the Ugaritic, Moabite, South Arabian, and Phoenician alphabets. Now, the script that they use, the Abanawa, Tawada, and all that stuff, that's Phoenician, man. And it's actually wrong. It's Todah, because that, like it says right here. Origins and development. Historically, the practice of using METRES LECTIONIS seems to have originated when the I and the A diphthongs written with the Yod and the Vav consonant letters respectively monophthonized to simple long vowels E and O. This epiphenomenal association between consonant letters and vowel sounds was then seized upon and used in words without historic diphthongs. In general terms, it is observable that early Phoenician texts have very few METRES LECTIONIS, and that during most of the first millennium BCE, Hebrew and Aramaic were quicker to develop METRES than Phoenician. However, in its latest period of development in North Africa, we're not worried about North Africa. Phoenician developed a very full use of METRES LECTIONIS, including the use of the letter ayin, also used for this purpose, much later in the Yiddish orthodoxy. Now, when it says North Africa, it's talking about the Punic. That would be Hannibal. And then Hannibal the Canaanite, Phoenician Canaanite, who fought the Romans. In pre-exilic Hebrew, there was significant development of the use of the letter hey to indicate the word final vowels other than I and U. Pre-exilic. This was probably inspired by the phonological change of the third person singular possessive suffix au and a to o in most environments. However, in later periods of Hebrew, the orthography was changed, so word final o was no longer written with hey, except in a few archaically spelled proper names, such as Solomon and Shiloh. The difference between the spelling in the third person singular possessive suffix with the hey in early Hebrew versus the vav in later Hebrew has become an issue in the authentication of the Yoash inscription. According to Sass, already in the Middle Kingdom, there were some cases of METRES LECTIONIS, i.e. consonant graphemes, which were used to transcribe vowels into foreign words, namely in Punic, Aramaic, and Hebrew, sometimes even Aleph. Nave notes that the earliest Aramaic and Hebrew documents already used METRES LECTIONIS. The earliest Aramaic and Hebrew documents already used METRES LECTIONIS, had vowels. Some scholars argue that the Greeks must therefore have borrowed the alphabet from the Aramaeans. However, the practice has older roots as the Semitic cuneiform alphabet of Ugarit, 13th century BC, already had METRES LECTIONIS. So the Ugarit 1300 in the 1300 BC already had METRES LECTIONIS vowel points. That right there transferred over to the Phoenicians and to the Aramaeans, in which that's where the Hebrews got it in the 9th century BCE. And we're gonna go ahead and prove that. All right, so let's see here. So if words can be written with or without METRES LECTIONIS, spellings that indicate the letters are called male. That's where you get masculine. All right, or plene, you know what I'm saying, for the Latin, meaning fool. And spellings without them are called hasur or defectum. We call them feminine. And some word, depending on the ending, we call it feminine. In some verb forms, METRES LECTIONIS are almost always used around 9th century CE. It was decided that the system of METRES LECTIONIS did not suffice to indicate the vowels precisely enough for the purpose of liturgical recitation of biblical texts. So, as supplemental vowel point system, the Kud, vowel indicating vowel pronunciation and other important phonological features not written by the traditional basic consonantal orthography, joined METRES LECTIONIS as part of the Hebrew century. So when they be saying that, oh, it's Yiddish and all this other kind of stuff, no, it's not. It's not Yiddish. It had vowel points. It had vowel points since the 9th century BCE, and then in the 9th century CE, they started is where the Nakud came from. When the Nakud came from METRES LECTIONIS. Okay, now let's go into some historical document. Okay, this book here is called METRES LECTIONIS in Ancient Hebrew Epigraphs. Okay, METRES LECTIONIS in Ancient Hebrew Epigraphs. Zioni Zavit. All right, University of Michigan. University of Michigan, stamp right there. Okay, peer-reviewed, cited, etc. All right. Now we're gonna go back down here. Okay, because I have a video I want to play of some of a elder that was taught by one rest, who has realized that the language that they were taught by one rest is erroneous, and he is starting to teach and say about the METRES LECTIONIS. Okay, so I'm gonna make this short so I can pull up the video of the elder. His video is about 30 minutes. All right, we want to get down to page 6. All of this is talking about everything, right? Actually, right here it says during the 11th and 10th centuries BCE, the Aramaeans, who borrowed the alphabet from the Phoenicians, invented the use of vowel letters to indicate final vowels. Yod for I, Vav for U, and Hey for A, and E sounds. These final METRES LECTIONIS were transmitted to the Hebrews and Moabites, who employed them from the 9th century. The extension of the use of METRES LECTIONIS, right? From first, it was the 10th and 11th centuries BCE, and a year later, in the 9th century BCE, it was deployed to the Hebrews and the Moabites. They started picking it up and using it. The extension of the use of METRES LECTIONIS to indicate medial vowels began in Aramaic during the 8th and 7th centuries and may have spread to the Hebrew by the 6th century. These conclusions have significant implications for the text criticism and interpretation of those parts of the Hebrew Bible which were composed in the pre-exilic period. And this is why I keep trying to tell these brothers in that debate. I was trying to go into the language, and they're shaking their heads, they're laughing, they're like, what is that? And all this other kind of stuff, because they're ignorant of METRES LECTIONIS. They're ignorant of their own language that they claim that they speak. And this is not shade or nothing. This is just proof from the text and proof from scholarly sources that is saying that the language that they speak had vowel points. And so the language that they're talking about, they're them saying that Hebrew didn't have no vowel points. How can they go into the Hebrew and say that it's saying what it's saying if they didn't know that their language had vowel points since the 9th century BCE? These conclusions have significant implications for the text criticism and interpretation of those parts of the Hebrew Bible which were composed in the pre-exilic period, continuing the programmatic work initiated by Albright in the Oracles of Balaam, 1944. Cross and Freeman applied these results to Judges 5, 2 Samuel 1, verses 20 through 26, Exodus 15, Genesis 49, Deuteronomy 33, and 2 Samuel 22, which they argued were to be dated between the 12th and 8th centuries BCE. In the second of the two joint dissertations, Studies in Ancient Yahwistic Poetry, 1950, published in 1975. Each poem was subjected to a detailed orthographic analysis which involved restoration of the text to the orthography of the period in which it was composed, and then to the specialized linguistic analysis which involved applying knowledge of the linguistic structure and vocabulary, poetic style, and metrical forms of the Ugaritic text to these poems. What was involved specifically in their linguistic analysis was more than just an explanation and the explication of the biblical text in light of the Ugaritic. It implied restoration of the text according to the more ancient mottos. All right, now get down here to page 6, right here. Okay. Now, they're talking about the Phoenician. It says, like their Aramaean neighbors to the northeast, the Hebrews employed the principle of polyphony, which they adopted a Phoenician and Phoenician type alphabet to their language by the 12th and 11th centuries BCE, right? The grapheme sin designated the phonemes S and sh, and in all likelihood, he designated both H and he. And in both I and G, and it shows the G grapheme. Whether or not the Gezer calendar of the 10th century BCE, the oldest comprehensible Hebrew inscription, contains a METRES LECTIONIS remains disputed. Discussions center on the status of the final Vav in Yud He Vav He, which occurs 4 times. Following Albright, 1943, pages 22 to 24, in his and Cross Freeman in their book EHO, page 57, argue that the Vav is consonantal, representing a third masculine singular suffix attached to a dual noun, and is to be pronounced ve or eve. That the orthography of the calendar is completely defective and that it is a representative of Hebrew scribal practices throughout the 10th century. Other interpretations, however, are possible. It could be taken as an archaic nominative dual construct, or as a archaic nominative plural construct, u. So they're saying that it could say instead of Yahweh, it could be saying Yahoo. Each of the suggestions is open to serious criticism, which undermines any historical reconstruction of the use of METRES LECTIONIS in Hebrew orthography, which relies on it. It is therefore discreet to assume that with EHO that the calendar is Hebrew and that its orthography is defective, without, however, opting for one or the other as the problematic solutions. Should latter research establish that the Vav is in fact a METRES LECTIONIS, it will be necessary to conclude that the emergence of METRES LECTIONIS in Hebrew If that is indeed the language of the inscriptions parallel chronologically the same development in Aramaic. So what he's saying is that if that from the 10th century does turn out to be Metres Lectionis, then they have to say that Metres Lectionis came earlier than the 9th century, that it actually adopted about the same time as the Aramaics. On the basis of their assumptions about the Gezer calendar, Cross and Freeman conclude, since the system of metric lectionis was not used in Hebrew before the 9th century, and since that system is substantially the same as the one used in Aramaic from the beginning of that century, if not earlier, and in Moabite from the middle of that 9th century at the latest, it can hardly be doubted that this system was borrowed by the Israelites from the Aramaeans during the course of the 9th century BCE. Let's read it again. It can hardly be doubted that this system was borrowed by the Israelites from the Aramaeans during the course of the 9th century BCE. Now, let's go look and see what year was the temple built. What year did Solomon build the temple? In 957 BC, right? So the 9th century is 900 BC, right? Right? So during the time of the first temple was being built, there was already speaking in the vowel language that these brothers do not accept from me when I try to point out. Go into the language and say the text doesn't say what it says in the English. It actually says something different. So again, 900 BC, right? We have it right here for scholarly source. It can hardly be doubted that this system was borrowed by the Israelites from the Aramaeans during the course of the 9th century BCE. Right? Now, let's see here. This is the elder, right? And he says One West Hebrew. The topic is One West Hebrew versus historical Hebrew, because I speak the historical Hebrew, which those brothers, when I was trying to get into it on that debate platform, they were laughing and giggling and showing their pride and wouldn't even let me pull up my screen so I can get into the Hebrew and show it to them and break it down, because they don't understand that the Hebrew that they claim that they speak, two consonants make a vowel. But this is one of the elders from the One West clan who said in Arias and all them in the original One West, from my understanding. So let's see and hear what the elder has to say. Okay. Now, y'all go follow this elder. His name is Peraza Jasharala. All right, this is him. Y'all go follow the elder. Don't throw no shade. Don't do anything. Don't come at him funny and nothing like that. You give the elder the proper due respect that the elder is due. All right. Now we're gonna go ahead and play and listen to what he has to say. It's only 38 minutes. Okay. Mute my mic.
And some thoughts about the biblical Hebrew, ancient Hebrew versus the Hebrew that we were taught at One West. Now, when I say One West Hebrew, what I'm talking about is a Hebrew that contains two vowels, which is the ah and I sound. You can say I or you can say E. I transitioned into the E sound for that I because that's the way all of the world pronounces it pretty much, except for in England. All right. So now the One West Hebrew is a valid system of pronunciation simply because there's no solid academic record from the Second Temple period to show the pronunciation of the Hebrew. Shalom, Christian Freeman. All right, brother in Liberia, all praise to the Most High. So that's why I say it's a valid pronunciation. And a lot of the other pronunciation of the Hebrew developed distinctly in different Israelite or Hebrew or Torah practicing or ethnic Hebrew communities, especially in what they call the Middle East and the Mediterranean region, okay? You have some Rhine pronunciations, some Ashkenazi type of Yiddish pronunciation that mix together with the Hebrew. But the truth of the matter is this: we, at the government of Mashra Yasha'Allah, which is the government of Israel, Mashra Yasha'Allah means the government of Israel. What we have elected and chosen to do, after talking with various leaders and elders, is to use the Tiberian pronunciation tradition of biblical Hebrew. Now, this is volume 2, but there's also a volume 1. In this particular academic scholastic approach to the Hebrew was researched by so many people, and this particular book is done by Jeffrey Hahn, which is a phenomenal Semitic linguist. All right, and he conferred with so many other Semitic linguists, people that have done research into Semitic languages, which covers from Babylon into part of the Susa Empire, going all the way over into parts of the Eastern Mediterranean, North Africa, Ge'ez from Ethiopia, as well as Coptic, the ancient languages of Egypt, as well as some of the northern Chadic languages from Sudan, the northern part of Sudan. These are all Semitic languages: Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, okay, and Ge'ez from Ethiopia. These are all Semitic languages, and there are more. Nabatean. These are all Semitic languages. So when we were taught the One West Hebrew, when I say One West Hebrew, I mean the Hebrew that instead of Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, we have Alap, Bayat, Gamal, Dalat, which I'm very proficient in. But it's not academically viable. There's no...
Now, he said it's not academically viable because it's not, because of what I just showed you academically about METRES LECTIONIS, which what I was trying to show Deacon and Hassad them in that brief little debate last night. Which, it was funny to them, and they don't, like he said, that we don't accept that. And I'm going to tag that clip in here right here. But this elder knows too. It's not the WADA and all that stuff. It's not academically viable. So therefore, when I tried to go into the academically portion of it, then they was getting confused. So when I was saying that Michael 5:1 is Bethlehem Ephra is just a clan, a tribe, or when he says smite, that it doesn't actually mean smite physically because the language doesn't say that. Or when he asked me, well, where it says Lord right here in Malachi, I think 3 was, is it the tetragrammaton? And when I say no, it's not the tetragrammaton. It's something else. Let me share my screen. Let me show you. They don't understand that. Because it's because I'm coming from a academia, scholarly viewpoint.
Historical data to substantiate that type of pronunciation, other than what Ariel gave to us. Now, Ariel is superb and excellent in many areas of teaching, but he was not and is not a linguist. Definitely not a Semitic linguist. And unfortunately, he does not really make himself available for discussion regarding the Hebrew. Now, there are some brothers that were with him at the time that may be available for commentary, regarding the Hebrew and what motivated them to develop that form of Hebrew. But that form of Hebrew is not historically, we can't demonstrate that pronunciation of Hebrew historically before the 21st century, all right, before the 20th century, I should say. Therefore, we have no academic records to show. There's no system, there's no pronunciation key, there's no grammatical rules, all right, to that form of the Hebrew.
Now, why is grammatical rules important? Because, for example, you have Adam, which means red. You have Adamoni, which means reddish. Then you have Adamu, which means they were reddish, plural, masculine construct. But you wouldn't know that if you go straight to the Blue Letters Bible and click on their little Strongs, and the H number is going to give you the Suresh root, which is going to be Adam, which means red. But there's many forms of saying of that word, okay, depending on the Benamin, the grammatical syntax. And that's what I'm trying to get brothers and sisters to understand. That's why it's important to learn the Hebrew. That's what this elder here is trying to convey.
All right. So, bringing a nation together requires us to have a firm pronunciation system. And the pronunciation system that we have opted for as a nation is the Tiberian pronunciation tradition, which goes back all the way to the 800s, 900s, 1000s. This pronunciation book was not just, this grammar book rather, is from the 9th century. It's over 1100 years old. So Jeffrey Kahn, when he put this together, he didn't just put his own ideologies and his own opinions into it and leave it at that. He gives us a Hebrew grammar book that was written in about the 9th, 10th century AD. Okay, we're talking like 1100, 1200 years ago.
Now, and I just proved from historical context that they were using METRES LECTIONIS in the 9th century, okay, in Israel, right? Temple was standing in 957, was built in 957, and then they were using METRES LECTIONIS since 9th century BCE. And I went and proved a scholarly source, as well as pulled up the definition of METRES LECTIONIS for those who did not accept that.
As far as the books before that one, and it was called the Hidayat al-Qari. And it tells you right here, it's called the Hidayat al-Qari, which is a guide for the reader. That's what that means, the guide for the reader. So we chose to use a historical, academic, empirical system. All right. And there are many distinctions between the system that we use and the Sephardic system, or the One West Hebrew system, which is not actually a system, and the Ashkenazi, or the Maghreb, or the Yemeni.
Now, he clearly tells you there's a difference between classical biblical Hebrew and the One West and the Ashkenazi and the Yiddish and all that. I speak classical biblical Hebrew, okay? I was taught by a linguist. That's why these brothers, when I try to go into them, I ask them, we'll break it down for the language, okay? And we'll run it back a little bit.
All right? And there are many distinctions between the system that we use and the Sephardic system, or the One West Hebrew system, which is not actually a system, and the Ashkenazi, or the Maghreb, or the Yemeni, or the Taimani. The closest to the Tiberian system would be the Taimani, which is actually based on the Babylonian system, okay, which there's no ancient record of these systems that we can access now, even though the Hidayat al-Qari was written originally in Arabic and was distributed throughout the Hebrew-speaking community from Babylon and Iraq all the way down into Yemen, throughout the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, and into Israel. So this is an ancient text that was used and referenced by Israelite scholars going into the 1100s, the 1000s, all right? Far more ancient than the records that we have with the Abba Gada type of Hebrew. Not to knock that type of Hebrew, but it's just not academically viable, and we just can't choose a system of pronunciation.
Abba Gaba, like I said, Tawada, Abba Nawa, Shabba Shabba. This book is BS. Those brothers don't even know. They don't know the history of their own language. They don't know the evolution of it. They can't parse and render using that Abba Nawa, Tawada, all that garbage. It's not academically viable, like the elder said.
The 1100s, the 1000s. all right, far more ancient than the records that we have with the Abagada type of Hebrew. Not to knock that type of Hebrew, but it's just not academically viable, and we just can't choose a system of pronunciation based on our love or affection for Ariyah. It has to be something that's academically where we can go to the Father and say, we chose this system of Hebrew pronunciation because we have the records of it, not because we love and like Ariyah or Parazah so much. Now, let me give you an example. Now, this is Genesis chapter 42, verse 1. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to read this in the form of Hebrew that we were taught at One West. And then I'm going to read it in the academic Hebrew of the Tiberian pronunciation. And then I'm going to make some, I'm going to distinguish between the two. But in the first verse, Genesis chapter 42, verse 1, it says, Wa yara'a ya'ikwa kaya shar shabar ba matazarium wa ya'amar ya'ikwab la banyawa la ma'a. It says fa tara'awa. That's what it says. Now, what you'll notice first is that when I say Jacob, I'm saying Ya'ai Kwab. This letter for Ya'ai Kwab, okay, let me show it to you. This letter for Ya'ai Kwab right here where it says Jacob, all right, that second letter right there is called, we call it Ayan, Ayan. And we were taught that this is an I. That's the letter I. Historically, before the 20th century, when Ariyah and other brothers developed the form of Hebrew that was taught at One West, this was called Ayin, and it's a guttural sound. See, the Hebrew that we learned from Harlem gives us Hebrew vowel sounds and Hebrew sounds that are based on our familiarity with Western languages, particularly English as the base language of the tribe of Judah in the Americas that developed this form of the Hebrew, okay? But every system outside of that and before that, this second letter of Jacob's name was called Ayin, Ha. It's called Ha, Ayin. Just like the word Gaza is Gaza. It's not Ga, it's Gaza, but it's transliterated as a hard GH sound when we look at ancient linguistic records. And even in Arabic, all right, it's Ra. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to read the same verse, but using the Tiberian pronunciation. Now I'm going to read it very slow so you can hear the distinction. And I'll maybe break it back down to the Harlem One West Hebrew also. All right, now, academically, based on the Tiberian pronunciation tradition of biblical Hebrew, which is over 1,000 years old, okay? The first word for when I saw, we would say in the Harlem One West Hebrew, we would say wayara'a. Now, in the form of Hebrew that we're talking about 1,000 years ago, it would be wayar. It would be wayar. Wayar. All right. Now, for Jacob, it would be Yaakov. Now, the biblical pronunciation of Hebrew, what that was spoken in biblical times, all right, did not have the distinction between the ba and va. So in the Tiberian system now, we would say Yaakov. But if it's a biblical pronunciation, it will be Yaakov. Yaakov. Okay? Now, this is why this is called the Tiberian pronunciation tradition of biblical Hebrew, not the pronunciation of biblical Hebrew. Why? Because the Tiberians maintain the records. The scholars at Tiberia maintain records for over 1,000 years, but it's not necessarily the only form of pronouncing the biblical Hebrew, because they knew that things had evolved and changed as the Hebrew had evolved and changed from the time of King David, which was like 1,000 BC, up until the time of the Tiberians writing this, the Hidayat al-Qari being written in like the 900s, which is 2,000 years, bro. This is 2,000 years. So the language and the pronunciation, of course, changed. This is why in some forms in the books of the Bible, you see Jerusalem is written differently with different vowel points. Sometimes it has a yod, a yad. Sometimes it doesn't have a yad, okay? So now, that's just one word that we're looking at. Yaakov as opposed to Yaiquab. Now, for Kaya, it says chi, a hard ka, chi, as opposed to Kaya. Now, for that was, this says yesh, as opposed to yash. The Tiberian would be yesh, as opposed to yash. Now, for grain, it says shaver, as opposed to shaber. So shaver or shaver, but in the one West Hebrew, we would say shabar for a grain. But in the more than 1,000+ year old Tiberian pronunciation system, we would say shaver. But if you want to go back before that to the biblical pronunciation, they can trace the change from that ba sound being more static, not dynamic, not shifting between ba and va, according to the Dagesh, Bagir Kefet, right? But being solid and always a ba. So we would say Shaber, hey, shalom, Bashem, Israel, love you. So Shaver is how we would say it now, as opposed to Shabar, okay? Sheber. All right, now it says, Ba Mitzrayim. Now, in the Ba Matazarium, sometimes I mix the two pronunciation. In the one West Harlem Hebrew that we were taught originally, that I've been learning since 1994, January, we would have said Ba Matazarium. In the ancient, almost a millennia old pronunciation system that we can document and reference, it would be Ba Mitzrayim. Ba Mitzrayim. Now, I know some of you said it should be Be Mitzrayim, but in the Tiberian pronunciation system, the Shva does not make Ba. It does not make a Be. It makes Ba. Like Bereshit for Genesis would be Bereshit as opposed to Bereshit. It would be Bereshit as opposed to Bereshit. So Be, and it's real quick, Bereshit or Bereshit. All right. So it says Ba Mitzrayim as opposed to Ba Matzarium. It would be Ba Mitzrayim. Okay. And we have the vowel is going to be pronounced as a O. It's going to be pronounced as a O as opposed to a, because that's what you get into when you look at the Sephardic. The Sephardic didn't make a distinction between the O and the a, the patah. But in the Tiberian system, again, and I keep reiterating the fact, we at Mashra Yasha'Allah had to base our pronunciation on an academically referenceable, all right, source for the Hebrew. So we chose the oldest grammatical Hebrew book available, which is the Hidayat al-Qari, which is the foundation.
And it's still not the wada, the ah on every word, on every consonant.
Of Jeffrey Kahn's Tiberian pronunciation tradition of biblical Hebrew. All right. Now originally, again, this was given to us in Arabic, and it has the Hebrew on one side, and then it has the English on the other side. And this is where you find all your rules about the Shavah, all your rules about the after a Shavah with the guttural sound following, the Shavah follows the sound of the vowel that comes after the guttural sound. Okay. So we have Mitzrayim as opposed to Matazarim. Now, next word we have, if you follow me in the Hebrew, Genesis chapter 42, verse 1, I'm on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th word. It says, why yomer, as opposed to why ya'amar, why yomer. Now, we were taught why ya'amar, and there's nothing wrong or sinful or wicked about you saying it and pronouncing it that way. It's just that you can't show any historical evidence outside of
Now, I'm gonna post a clip of me saying Yeshayahu and them making all kind of faces and expressions, not understanding what, being ignorant of what this brother is saying and not understanding that what I'm trying to tell them from the language is true, even when it comes down to Micah 5.
Of what we got from One West to substantiate that pronunciation. When we go into the actual records and follow the rules of grammar, we see that it was pronounced as Wayomer, Wayomer, Wayomer. Okay, we see Wayomer as opposed to Wayamar. So it's a difficult transition for some. Like my sons, if they read this verse, my sons are gonna say Wayara Aya Aikwab Kaya Shad Shabbat. They can read the vowel points, but they're not going to pronounce it with those vowel points because they're used to just recognizing the consonants and putting the after the consonants. So now after Wayomer, we have another instance of having the word Jacob. Again, we would say in One West Hebrew, we would say Ya'aikwab. But again, that letter is not an I. That letter is Hayin, Hayin. In every Semitic language, it's pronounced Ha, Ha. From back here, it's not pronounced I or E. It's pronounced Ha, Hayin, Hayin. So for Jacob, you will say Yah, Yaakov, Yaakov. Now, the V came in to distinguish that buzz sound to make it more hard because it's very light if you pronounce the B. You have a Kov as opposed to Kob. See, Kob. It gets lost, excuse me. It gets lost, Kob. But Kov, you can still hear it. It's a harder pronunciation, all right? Now it says, you have the chametz, again, the chametz, which is aw. Chametz is aw. Sephardic pronounces the chametz as like the patah. Now you have this letter here, and I'll show it to you. You have this letter here, all right, right here. You have the right here. You have the shava, all right. You have the shava right here. Now in the other systems of Hebrew, you're gonna say this one le bono, le bono. That's how you're going to pronounce it. In One West Harlem Hebrew, we're going to say la banyawa, la banyawa. But instead of how they got this le, this the Tiberian pronunciation is going to be a quick la bono, la bono, la.
Now he is correct, absolutely correct. And if it had a little dot right here, which would make it be a sharuk, we would say lebanu. Okay, lebanu. And the Suresh root is bani, right here. Bani. Okay, bani. Right here is the Suresh root with the preposition lamed. Okay, a preposition lamed, which means his son, what makes it his sons, right? You have the Suresh root, which is the root of the bani, right? The bet, the noon, the yod, with a lamed preposition that makes it his, okay, his sons, okay, and the na, you have a plural suffix, Lebanon, right? Had it had a sharuk, a little dot right here up under the vav, it would be Lebanu. Their sons.
No. All right. So the shava is going to be more of a la, quick la bono, not la bono. And it's not going to be le bono, even though it says le here. We're not using this. We're using the rules that we get from the Tiberian, which says that the lamed is going to be pronounced as with the shava, it's going to be a quick la bono. all right? Not La Banyawa. La Banyawa is what we learned from, One West, but they didn't use academic records to teach us the Hebrew.
Now that's what I was attempting to do with these brothers when I came up there for that debate. Okay, and that's why it's 4 or 5 different definitions depending on the construct of the word of that final form. But I don't think those brothers accept that because they think that it's Yiddish or that the ancestors didn't speak that, which this elder just proved along with the academically sourced and the METRES LECTIONIS dictionary. All right, the definition of METRES LECTIONIS, and we proved with that source, which we'll go back to at the end of the video.
Now, big props and kudos to them for innovating that system, but was it necessary? Did we have a system that was already in place? Again, I'm coming to you all the way live from the book that was written. This book is like over 1,000 years old. This is the name of the book right here, Hidayat al-Qari. So I didn't just randomly say, well, which system works for me? Is it going to be the Sephardic? I was leaning more toward the Yemeni or the Taimani pronunciation. But the Taimani pronunciation isn't the oldest referenced pronunciation for the Hebrew. The foundation, the oldest pronunciation is the Tiberian when you look academically. It's not which one is necessarily best or which one is more suitable, but which one can we go back and say this is the most common ancestor in modern times of all of the Hebrew that we can access now. And the oldest academic records that we have are going to be the Tiberian pronunciation tradition. Okay? So now once we go from that verse, the next word, we see, and I'll show you, we'll see the word right here. You see that? It says, we would say in the One West Harlem Hebrew, we'd say lama, okay? Which means for what, or to what, unto what. Now, the Sephardic pronunciation would be lam ma, lam ma. All right. Now, the Tiberian pronunciation system, as well as the Taimani or the Yemeni pronunciation, would be lom, law. This is all comments or kamats. It's going to be lom.
Is exactly right.
Lomo.
Now, that little curve right there means something. It's closed. It's not open. Okay. If it was open, then it would mean something. It would mean totally different. But this was this curve. Now, I just learned about this like yesterday in my class with my teacher, with my linguistics teacher, okay? I have to go find it and remember exactly what it is. But it means something, okay? It's closed, so it means it's a some type of action, okay? I think it is a perfect, it's a perfect action. It's something, but it means something, okay? Just like this right here. The little atana means something. All right, all these mean something, and it's not Yiddish. It's classical Hebrew that they spoke in the 9th century.
Lomo. That's going to be the pronunciation. You see? So we have, even though they got different stuff down here, they're not always correct when they give you the pronunciation, because they're using this from like a kind of a softer Tiberian pronunciation system, not a hardcore. This is definitely not the Sephardic pronunciation, because they have their comments as a "o" as opposed to a "a." See, they have it as a "o," and they have the "b" as a "va" as opposed to "ba." That's the line telling you to say "va." But the ancient pronunciation of the Hebrew would have been "la bono" as opposed to "la va." No, this telling you to say V, not a hard B. But we pay attention to what the letters are actually saying, and you can flex between the biblical ancient before the Tiberian and the actual Tiberian. But so this would be Lamo as opposed to Lama. All right, and definitely not Lama. But it's funny because the Sephardic would say lama, because the Sephardic doesn't make the distinction between the comment and the patah. This is a patah. I mean, this is a comment, which is an all sound, and this is a patah, which is an ah sound.
Now, this right here is a W because it is a preterite vowel. It is a vowel preterite because preposition. So you see that right there in front, it changes it to a W. Okay, while your mother. So this word right here is while your mother. You know what I'm saying? That's what that is what that word is, while your mother, because you have the conjugate vowel stem right here. Okay, it's while your mother.
So this sound here is between ah and o. So it's ah, o, o. And this is between the ah and the o. All right. Now this last one, in Harlem 1 West, we would say tha, thara, awa. But it actually says in the Tiberian pronunciation, we would say teeth. All right. We say teeth, rou, teeth, rou, teeth, rou. But in the Sephardic pronunciation, you would say teeth ra'u, teeth ra'u. Because remember, the Sephardic does not recognize the distinction between the comments that we have here.
Now, remember why he said teeth baru? Because I said that's a sharuk right there. Okay, that is a sharuk. A vav with a dot is called a sharuk. At the end of the word, it's called a sharuk. It makes the oo sound. That's why he says titaru. Okay, that would be how we say it in classical Hebrew, titaru. You know what I'm saying? Titaru. That would be in with your, you know what I'm saying? Titaru.
And the patah that we have here, it doesn't make the distinction. All right. But in the Tiberian pronunciation system, we do make that distinction. So this would be hit ra'u, hit ra'u. All right. Heath, all right. It was not Heath, but teeth. It'd be teeth ra'u. This dagesh baget kafet tells you to make that tha sound. Without the dagesh is th. So this is teeth ra'u, teeth ra'u. And these marks here are not pronunciation guides. I hate to tell you, these marks here, these diacritics right here, and a little comma type thing right here, and the symbol here. These are not for intonation. These are actual musical notes. And this.
Now he's wrong on that right there. It's not musical notes. That right there is called an atna, and what an atna is a pause. So the writer wants you to pause and think about the previous sentence that you had just read in the Hebrew. So whenever you see this right here in the Hebrew, that means he wants you to pause and meditate and think on that particular sentence or subject or whatnot. It is called a atna. Okay, antenna or atna, one of the two, but that is what it is. Okay.
This note at the end of the verse is an E. This tells you that the note of each verse, where it ends at, and it ends on the key
now,
E.
What he's referring to
scale.
is the connotation musical notes.
All right. So,
all right. They will be at the top.
So when we talk about,
so right here,
in this note,
they will be at the top. Okay, and like in the Book of Psalms and things, you'll see a lot of connotation notes at the top, and that lets you know the pitch and the the pitch that you're supposed to be singing that particular verse or whatnot. Okay, so that's what he's referring to in that area. Okay, it's not at the bottom. The musical note's not at the bottom.
At the end of the verse is an E. This tells you that the note of each verse, where it ends at, and it ends on the key E on the musical scale. All right. So when we talk about the One West Harlem Hebrew that we all love so much, it's great, and I still use it, but it's just not an academic record to prove how we pronounce these words other than what we got from the 19th century. I mean, the 20th century in the 1900s. But we do have a Hebrew grammar book that goes back to the first half of the 11th century, and I'll show you so you can see it for yourself to know that I'm not a transformer named Capricorn. What does it say right here? Let me clean off my camera a little bit. What does it say? It says the author of Hidayat al-Qari, right? The author of Hidayat al-Qari was a Karaite grammarian. It says Abu al-Faraj Harun, who was active in Jerusalem in the first half of the 11th century. That means the early 1000s. Okay, he produced the work in Arabic in both a long and a short version, first writing the long version and subsequently abbreviating this to produce a shortened recension. These underwent further recensions in later centuries in both Arabic and Hebrew. See Volume 1, Section 1.0.13.1. The original Arabic version written by Abu al-Faraj Harun contained an introduction followed by sections on the consonants, vowels, and accents. So again, 11th century, that's the 1000s, folks. So we're talking about a historical, grammatical, Hebrew academic book that's been around for at least 1,000 years. At least 1,000 years. It's been around at least 1,000 years, which means that it's not as ancient as the Hebrew that was spoken in King David's time, or even in Hamashiach's time, the Messiah's time, in the time of the Second Temple, before the destruction of the Romans under Titus and Vespasian between 66 and 70 AD. But it is nonetheless the oldest that we can put our hands on now. And to say we're going to just use the Hebrew that Arianim taught us without no academic record is following a man-made protocol that has another protocol that existed before us. And again, big ups to all of our elders from One West. Big up to Ariyah. And there's a lot of other brothers that helped put the Hebrew together that are unsung heroes that left from out of One West early on, but they helped put the Hebrew together. But we cannot go back historically. What I'm presenting to you is a historical Hebrew grammar book that is over 1,000 years old, that was written before we went into slavery, brothers and sisters. We had this academic record, all right? We had this academic record, the Hidayat al-Qari, available before we went into slavery, when our people were still, before we went into slavery in the Americas, when we were still Israelite communities in the Middle East, in Arabic-speaking countries, in Iraq and in Yemen. All right, it tells you that this was from the first half of the 11th century, which means from 1050. So from 1050 to 2050 is 1,000 years. And it tells you that he based his works on Hebrew grammar books that were older than what he was doing, going back into the 8th and 9th century. So we have a Hebrew grammar book that tells us that no, it wasn't pronounced as Ya'aikwab, but that ayan was pronounced as a Ra. You know, we're not familiar with those guttural letters. So we kind of took the more westernized way out, and that was great for the time. But now, since we have access to the whole world of the internet, Chat GPT, artificial intelligence, to see what's out there, we have to modify and we have to grow and make the necessary adjustments so we can be as pure as possible with what we're pronouncing with the Hebrew and how we're reading the scriptures. All right. And again, Jacob was not pronounced as Ya'iquab, that we can prove historically before our elder Ariah came out with that pronunciation and gave that to us, which did us a lot of good. But before him, when we check 1,000 years before him, and we look at the Hebrew grammar book written in 1050, around 1050, all right, AD, 1,000 years ago, it was Yahakob, with that I, that ayan being pronounced as hayin, and with that hayin having a vowel underneath of it, which was a patah, pronounced as a ah. Now, before the system of the vowels were put in, people knew how to pronounce it. People knew what letters had the vowels and could tell from the context if it was going to be cat or cot, if it was going to be cat or cot or cot, if it was going to be a vowel put on there. Now, if you look on if you go to my page and you look at the first video that I have pinned on there, I give you an academic reference and I give you historical and archaeological evidence that the Hebrews, as well as the people that put us in captivity, did use the vowel systems for speaking the Hebrew. And when they transliterated our names, they used vowels also.
Let me rewind that back a little bit.
Here, I give you an academic reference and I give you historical and archaeological evidence that the Hebrews, as well as the people that put us in captivity, did use the vowel systems.
So how do you debate somebody who don't understand that about their own language when it comes down to the Canaanite Phoenician script?
Or speaking the Hebrew, and when they transliterated our names, they use vowels also.
So how can they be right? Now remember, so when I said
Israelites and in the Septuagint, which was translated in like the first translation happened in like 286 BC, before Hamashiach. All right, that pronunciation system in the Septuagint used the vowel systems also. Why would the Hebrew scholars translate names using vowels other than ah and I if the Israelites didn't use a ah and I in the BC times?
Now, do you guys understand why when you go to the concordance or to the Suresh root or the root of a Hebrew word, it gives you 15 million definitions, all right? And then depending on, both of them, Bible Hub and Blue Letter gives you all the positions where they're used. But Bible Hub is a little bit more in detail. It'll tell you exactly the different meanings in the verses right next to them. That is why, because you have different final forms of the word of that root word. Okay, you have some with different prepositions that means different things. Okay, makes it plural, singular, masculine, feminine, perfect or imperfect. You know, you have the different forms of cause stem, which is a perfect form, simplest form there. You have the hit field, the whole field, the pa'ah form. You know, that's why it has the different definitions under those different forms. But those who say that Hebrew had no vowels, how can you tell me, how can you say what form a word is? Okay, how can you say that this word is definitely means what you saying that it means? Okay, if every consonant is followed by the I, okay, which would mean that every word is feminine. You know what I mean? So, you know, how would you use the Paleo Hebrew script and break down a verse and show the grammar and everything if you don't believe that the Paleo Hebrew had vowels and the two consonants didn't form a vowel in the Paleo Hebrew? You can't do that. But y'all are 100% right, and y'all the prophets of the Most High. Y'all tell it.
When you look at the Greek Septuagint, in the actual Greek, and you look at the names, they use vowels in the names. They use A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes vowels that couldn't even be pronounced in the Greek. And that's where we find ourselves now. We have vowels that people still don't pronounce that only exist in certain languages. Like in Turkey, we have the aw. The aw as a single vowel exists in Hebrew and in Arabic and in Gaz and in Ethiopian, but it doesn't exist in Hebrew. You write aw as a AU in English, aw, fault, ball. All right. But in the Hebrew, it was a sound that was implicit in certain words. All right. So look up and research. Get yourself a book. I got the book. I made myself the book from printing out the records. Shabbat Shalom, Silawa. All right, called the Tiberian Pronunciation Tradition of Biblical Hebrew. And this one is written by, translated by Jeffrey Kahn, but he translated the grammar book over 1,000 years. All right. So the landscape is shifting, and we have to show and prove, and we got to come correct. We can't just say, well, so and so said such and such, so that's what we're gonna do it. You know, Yahweh bless you too, Gamboa. All right, and big up to big up to the number one brother in Israel, Kanai Zabak. All right, shout out to you, big up to you, much love to you. All right, much love to Elder Zabak out there. All right, so One West Hebrew, fine and perfect, but we got grammar books that are 1,000 years older than the Hebrew that we got from One West. And we got to start using these grammar books to learn better. All right, Shabbat is about to start for me, y'all. And what time Shabbat start tonight?
All right, and as you can see, my mic was off, so we'll get it going from there. What I was saying was right here is Le Nagid. You have the Lamed right here, Lamed with the Suresh root of Nagid. And if you go right here, you see right here of a foreign ruler, Ezekiel 28:2, Daniel 9:25-6. Okay, and that word for Masha, that word in Daniel is Masha. Okay, and right here it also confirms right here Masha, which is the root word Mashiach 48:99. It also was referring to King Cyrus. From Daniel 9:25 to Daniel 9:26, and refer Daniel 9:25 to Cyrus. Okay, all right, and look, Daniel 9:26 to Seleucus or High Priest Onias. Okay, so it's not Christ. It's not the timelines are wrong. Okay, you have to start the timeline from the very first deportation of Jeremiah, because the prophecy whole thing is sitting around Jeremiah's prophecy. All right, so this is why it's important to learn the Hebrew and learn what's classical biblical Hebrew and what's not, because people like me who know the history of the language, we're going to prove that you're wrong. And when we go into and study, and some of the reason, majority of the reason why we're Old Testament only is because we actually go into this language, the classical biblical Hebrew, and we study and we see that all these so-called prophecies are not really prophecies. Especially like you can go to Micah 5 and all these things, because these brothers think that Micah 5, the reason why they don't understand, and this is another video I'm going to come on a break. We're going to do a reaction video to the debate, and we're going to cover all that. I've had a chance to look at Micah 5 and everything, and it dawned on me that these brothers still think a precept is a verse here and a verse there, here a little and there a little, line upon line, and they don't think that they're supposed to actually apply Isaiah 28:10 to the law, statutes, commandments, because that's what a precept is. But I would employ those brothers, and anybody watching, if you think that the precept is a verse from this chapter or that book and etc., I employ you to read Isaiah 28:10 all the way down to verse 19, because he explicitly says that you that do that are ensnared, and you make a covenant with death, and that covenant with death is with Yahshua. Okay, so you guys go ahead and continue to do that, but go ahead and just read down there Isaiah 28:10 on verse down to 19 and see if that doesn't make sense logically. Okay, I've already shown and proved to you that these brothers did not know that the language that they say that they speak and understand had vowel points. And so, and you heard it from an elder that came up under One West. I didn't come up under One West. So you heard it from an elder that came up under One West, admit that it's not historically accurate. There's nothing in academia that can prove it, but yet they laugh at what I spoke at and what I was trying to prove from an academia standpoint. So we'll just do a reaction video, because there's really no point in really just, I guess, having a debate no more, because I'm sure, unless they can go and do the same thing and do the grammar and go from the Paleo Hebrew and pull those verses out and use the grammar, and we can discuss, the basics, if the basics of the grammar that they don't understand, So METRES LECTIONIS, here again, as you can see, 900 BC, and I mean, that's a historical reference right here. The historical reference, 900 BC, this historical document. Again, this book is right here. You can get this PDF online. Okay, and the title of this book is called, get the photo for y'all. It is called METRES LECTIONIS in Ancient Hebrew Epigraphs. Okay, by Zioni Zevet, the University of Michigan, the libraries, all right? Published in 1980, METRES LECTIONIS in Ancient Hebrew Epigraphs. Number 2, all right, this is book number 2, all right? Edited by David Noah Friedman, okay? By Ziomi, American Schools of Oriental Research. Notice that they call that the Orient and not the Middle East, because it is. Here it is right here. Okay, I'll include a link down into the The link down in the description. So y'all leave a comment and let me know. Is it Yiddish that I'm speaking, or is it classical Hebrew that I'm speaking, or is it just some made up stuff that I just following, and who is actually, speaking the correct Hebrew, the Abanawa, Shabbat Shalom, Tawada, the people that put a after every consonant, or me that actually using the vowel points from METRES LECTIONIS, which the Nakud was created from. Okay, now I provided scholarly sources. I provided a video with an elder from One West that has realized that the language that they were taught at One West and all its splinter cells is not academically provable. So where do we go from here? Okay, all right, now how can you say that things are translated in the English, translated correctly, or you read from the English, if you cannot even translate it from the so-called language that you say that you speak, because you don't know that it had vowel points and you put a ah sound after every consonant? Okay, so yeah, I wasn't prepared for that debate in Micah 5 and everything, so but we'll get there. I am prepared now, and we'll see if we'll actually have another debate or not. But I'm going to go over the video of the little portion of the time that I spent, and I'm going to actually break down a portion of that Micah 5 and Daniel 9. I just showed you a little glimpse of Daniel 9, that whole Messiah, the Prince, one in the Septuagint and in the Hebrew, the Prince is not there. And even if you, say that you do want to say the Prince, it's still not talking about who you think it's talking about. The Prince that's supposed to die is Cyrus. Okay, so yeah. We'll go from there, okay? And this is what I'm saying. This is why you have to go into the Hebrew and to the classical biblical Hebrew with parse and render and see. That's why I was trying to tell these brothers about Micah 5. I haven't parsed and rendered it yet, so I can't speak on something I haven't done yet. Because then I don't play that got you game. I don't assume. I just go strictly off what the text says, okay? So yeah, to the next video. This is Brother Araya signing out. Peace.
Sing unto Yahweh a new song. Sing unto Yahweh, let all the earth call. Bless his name and show forth his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory amongst the heathens and wonder amongst the people. Every morning and evening I give him praise. The false gods are vain by the Most High. The skies was made, nothing new under the sun. Yeah, these times don't change. I guide my steps, directed, devise my ways. Honor and majesty my Yah retain. Beauty is in the sanctuary amongst the saints. Give Yah glory and strength. Search far and wide across the 7 seas for a sign but never seen a God alive like Yah, my Elohim.